Welcome to Exit Algorithms, the podcast where we decode what it really takes to unlock growth, streamline operations, and prepare your business for a high value exit. I'm your host, Pete Vera, and today I'm excited to bring on Ben Harmsen. He's a certified Lean Six Sigma Master Black Belt, has deep industry knowledge and experience in supply chain management and a number of other industries, and founder of Hammer Legacy Solutions Group. So, Ben, so excited to have you. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Can we start? It's useful probably to share a bit about your background. I saw a lot of, Fortune 500 corporate roles as well. And what led you to found Hammer Legacy?
Yeah, so just kind of at a high level, got my start very early on with just standards and leadership and things of that nature in the United States Army many, many years ago. From there, had a 12-year stint with the Chrysler Corporation. And that's where I was really first exposed to Lean Six Sigma process standardization. We went through ISO 9000 and all, implementations and all of that. And, at the time, didn't really realize what I was learning. From there, went on. I worked in the Coca-Cola network for 6 years in various roles. Kind of that's where I got my opportunity to really kind of apply what I had learned, and did everything from lead operations to doing project management and major implementations, software solutions, and so on. Had a brief stint with some 3PLs. What our customer was Walmart. Core-Mark was there for a little bit, did some manufacturing, made bacon for a little bit for Dailies Premium Eats, which was great. Recently, I did some e-commerce work, and like I was saying, I'm now working with the construction company. So all of that experience really just boiled down to, it didn't matter what the industry was. It really didn't matter even if what part of the company or the division we were working in, there's just waste everywhere. And for me, as much as I love the process, fixing the problems, there was a selfish side where, I wanted to do a little bit more for me. I love saving millions, but I like to put a little bit more of that maybe in my pocket than just always the big company. So, but that's really what led to it. And it was really just, it felt like the right time. And the experience was there to support where we wanted to go.
Yeah, definitely. That's awesome. I love the, unique perspective you bring to the table, having consulted with so many different industries and get to apply some of the same principles, but in a lot of different businesses. I imagine that comes in handy. Yeah.
Yes, it does. Yeah. And they are simple. The beauty of lean is that the tools or the methodology is designed to be simple. And I really think when used and applied, that's what makes it transferable regardless of the industry.
For sure. Yeah, and you said you reduce waste in businesses. What does that look like? What's maybe the first thing you look at when you walk into an operation?
Well, typically what I see is I always say there's 10% all day, regardless of the industry. Now, that's not to say that there's aren't companies that are running exceptionally well, but what I have found most have waste. I mean, first of all, there's waste in every process, regardless of how good the process is or the system is. There's going to be a level of waste in it. But I think most don't see it because they mistake profitability with doing the right things, right? Well, look at how well we're doing, look at how profitable we are. But that doesn't deny or that doesn't erase the fact that there could be waste. I always say there's 10% in every business. Typically, believe it or not, what I find is 20 to 30. And
Wow.
it's simply just due to a gap, if you will, in what I call process controls and accountability, or PCAs. So when I walk in, typically the first thing I'll ask is, whatever we're talking about, usually the pain point is coming from, something on the P&L, somewhere we're struggling, out on the floor, or, in some other department, whatever the case may be, spending more than we expected or losing. And, first thing I will ask is, do we have a process for that? I always get a yes. And then the second question I ask is, can you show it to me? I almost always get kind of like this look on their face, like, well, what do you mean? I've been doing this for 10 years. I've been doing this for 20 years, which is wonderful, but that's really not a process. And then from there, we can go down the rabbit hole, if you will. How are we inspecting then what we expect? How are we auditing the process to make sure the standards are being met? Ultimately, how are we measuring it, which is key to anything. From if you're going to improve it, you must measure it. And And then how does that tick and tie to the bottom line so that we can truly see that what we're doing is working and having a positive effect on the bottom line. So yeah, and like I said, I think it applies to everything I certainly have seen, and I would argue most that are out there.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And you find it's the same metrics or the same problems industry to industry, or maybe what are some of the metrics or KPIs you look at and track?
Well, there's always a level of productivity to everything. It's whatever those variables are. What are the outputs? So whether you're in a warehouse or, and you're picking packages or eaches or cases, whatever the case may be, but to even processing paperwork. I mean, we measure now where we're at our PO and how quickly we are moving POs through the systems, approving our invoicing because we were doing a lot of batching, and batching always creates a bottleneck. So little things like that, and then even processing HR paperwork. Those are some things. Again, what are the defects? Defects is a great. So whether it's errors, defects, mispicks, right? Whatever you want to classify that as. Because I always kind of have a cliche saying, right? Don't be in a hurry to get it done. Be in a hurry to get it right. And I'd rather spend the extra couple of seconds on the front end getting that right because somebody has to clean it up and fix it. And then we get stuck in that dreaded, rework, redo. Anytime you put a re in front of anything, it's pretty much waste at that point. So the KPIs can vary, but there's always a productivity. There's always an accuracy to them. And it could be as simple as a pass or a fail. Did we do what we were supposed to do in the time frame? So they're not meant to be overcomplicated, and sometimes I can see that they are, but those can be very effective and be implemented pretty quickly.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, thanks for sharing. A lot of our listeners, they might not be familiar with Lean Six Sigma. Do you mind sharing kind of at a high level so a toddler could understand what it is
Right.
and, where does it apply? It's not just large manufacturers, right?
No, absolutely. At a very high level, it is about reducing waste and variation. So lean is about reducing the waste that we see, and that could be even in our day to day. I kind of drive my kids crazy with my waste reduction in their own, personal lives because I do take it into account for mine because it brings value. So we reduce the waste. There are 8 of them. They are existent in all processes. I won't bore you with all 8 of them, but the acronym is DOWNTIME. So if you wanted to go Google that or the audience wanted to go look it up, you can get a better, a little more deeper definition of what those are. But that's what the lean is about, reducing the waste out of a system or a process to make it flow. Oftentimes, lean is mistaken with less. And people get scared of it. Oh, that means they're going to fire us or we're going to. No, it is about flow. It is about having the right resources in the right places so that the process is seamless for the most part versus bottlenecking or having too many or not enough in most cases in the right places. And then Six Sigma is that reduction in variation. So how often are we hitting the quality mark? How often are we delivering on time and in full, right? That we are consistent in what we do versus these big ebbs and flows where we have a great day and then a bad day and then a bad day and then a great day, and we're just not consistent. So the Six Sigma side really brings in a data analytics and a project management approach, if you will, the DMAIC process into reducing variation and getting a more consistent result.
Got it. Well said. Yeah, you kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, but what are some common mistakes you see businesses make that you typically go in and fix? You said there's at least 10% of room for our listeners that are business owners. What can maybe to look out for?
Well, a couple of things is one, you have to be a champion for it. Lean does not fail, I have found, due to a lack of tools or, the methodology itself is not the opportunity. It's the fact that it's not championed. And it really has to be championed by the top down. What I always tell the leaders that I come across is if it's not important to you, it will certainly not be important to those that you lead. And lean
Mm,
is a culture. It is a foundation of continuous improvement. It is not a program. So, I think there's a misunderstanding with, what it takes to drive because culture is, it's everything, there's that saying out there, culture devours strategy, 100% true. So it
mm,
must be championed. And I see most opportunities where it comes up short it's simply that it's not being owned and championed as it should. The other thing is we don't inspect what we expect, right? So we go through the process, we define, we analyze, we improve, we put controls in, we measure, or excuse me, we put the metrics to it, but then we don't control it. We don't inspect what we expect, and most importantly, we don't hold accountable. And that doesn't mean we, write up and fire everybody either. I'm not trying to advocate for that. That's the only solution, but you got to know where to coach. And there is an opportunity to either coach up or coach out, because not, the roles in which we have, they're not for everybody, and most jobs are not easy. They do come with standards and expectations, and if we're not holding people accountable to them, then you never really get it off the ground. So for me, those are the two biggest opportunities. So to make sure that we're champion what it is that we're doing, taking ownership, and then inspecting what we expect, and ultimately holding people accountable.
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of talk about that kind of that same topic of change management,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
technology, but I imagine it could be even more intense Lean Six Sigma, just depending on the business and the culture, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And, and the culture is, like I said, I've, I've, it's always the biggest thing. When I walk into places that are struggling, it is culture driven, typically leadership driven. And it's not to pick on folks, it's just the data or the gaps that I've seen over the years. And most often it's because we don't understand. It's not a lack of willing or avoidance, if you will, even though people do fear change, but it is more of not understanding really what it takes or how to apply it. And then to your point, change management, that's what Lean Six Sigma is. I mean, it really is just a form of change management. It's a systematic, disciplined way to go about enabling change and managing it.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Does it depend on the business how to implement it better, or like, and make sure it stays in the business? Like, what do you recommend for business owners that are trying to adopt Lean Six Sigma?
Well, don't boil the ocean, right? Let's pick the top one or two things that are going to have the biggest impact and go after them. I think, and maybe that's even in a division or a department. You don't have to do. So I'll use a warehouse for example. You've got receiving, you have picking, you have put away or stocking, right? You have the dock operations, loading and unloading. You don't have to solve all the issues in all of those departments. You can just focus on one. What I like to do is focus on one area. We'll define what the look of success is, if you will, put the standards and measurements in place, and then ultimately we'll measure and continuously improve, coach, and grow. And then that becomes the example of all other things. Because once you can establish what the example of success looks like, now you can duplicate it. So even if it's something small, I would encourage that you do something small, get a win, get a standard or an example in place, and then it's easy to go train somebody to that, and you can implement. And might have to tweak it, depend on because the receiving dock isn't quite the same as the loading dock, or the HR department isn't quite the same as the project management department, but there's similarities enough, so you just tweak the variables, if you will, based on the nuance. But again, having an example to turn back or reflect on and use for reference, to me, I believe that you know it streamlines that change management process, because you've always got something to go look back to.
Yeah, I love that. Really good insights there. One of the big themes of this show is AI and technology. I'm curious from your perspective, are you able to increase your output with AI, or are you using it?
Absolutely. And I know there's several out there, and I dabble in some. I mean, ChatGPT, I've been doing that for a couple of years and really got that dialed in. It's amazing what that tool can do when prompted. So it's great from just an analytics perspective, pumping out reports in a much more timely manner, scheduling, planning, forecasting. We got a gentleman I hired a few months ago to bring into the construction place who's a senior data analyst. So, we were using power automation as well, and
Awesome.
combining those tools so that we can schedule our folks, putting names to where we need these resources for our projects. What else are we doing? Let me look at my notes. Oh, this just decision making, right? Because we train it and we're putting contract information in, and these contracts sometimes can be overly complex. So, we can train the AI to understand the contract, and then we plug in scenarios where there was questions or debate on how that should be read and or interpreted. And then we go back and we reference that. So when new things come up, we can plug it in and it will kick out like scenarios or likely decisions, or even things that we could push back on based on maybe some generality or vagueness and how things read. So it's been a tremendous tool. And the way that I view it, AI is not going to replace operators, right? Somebody has to do the work, perform the task, whatever it is, for the most part. And I'm not talking about robots, but operators that use AI will replace operators that don't. I mean, AI is, I think it's easy to say and that it's not going anywhere anytime soon, right? So yeah, and it's every day. It'll be something new tomorrow, right?
Yeah, yeah, constantly changing and so
Yeah,
rapid.
yeah.
I love what you said too. ChatGPT, you can get it to eventually be like almost a different thing than when you start, just by training it, getting it to know how you talk and think and stuff.
And we're looking at it too. I use it in manufacturing, camera systems where you can teach it to identify a defect, and then reject it from the line. We're looking at it, we're very just entry level, but looking at it from a construction space where we have spotters that are looking at trenches, looking for potential line hits or other safety opportunities or risks that are out there, especially when you're working in the right of way or out in public. So there's certainly other things, camera systems and what's going on out there. It's amazing. And that's touching every industry now as well. So I think from an AI perspective, the cameras, and because that's what the robots are really, right? It's just a camera that can move for the most part, and it's training and teaching itself based on what it's seeing and doing every day. So, the camera systems are, they're already big, but I see them being a big part of everything, across pretty much all industries as well.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, their direct application and also the telematics that you can get from them as well.
Yeah, yeah,
What are
yeah.
your thoughts on robotics and the current state in the logistics industry specifically? I listened to a podcast recently. They're saying now you can buy basic robots that do basic warehouse functions for about $7,000.
Right. I mean, I think it's the future. I mean, it's definitely going to get tested. I understand it. You're probably reducing the human, the error rate down to basically a Six Sigma level, right? Which is 3.4 defects out of a million, and maybe it would even be better. So, I mean, I understand it. I support it, and it's really, if I'm a current warehouse associate on the front line, maybe I'm looking at how do I better educate myself to work on those, because somebody's going to have to maintain them. Somebody's going to have to work on them, right? Somebody's going to have to do certain things throughout whatever the process is, whether it's a warehouse or not. So again, those aren't going anywhere. And to your point, they're becoming more and more affordable. So I think now that you're going to see it with the much larger companies, Fortune 500 companies, you're going to see, smaller companies doing less than half 500 million and less will be able to afford, or even 100 million or less can afford, to bring in a few of those resources, if nothing more, to test them.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's going to start with the bigger companies and then trickle down. But you can easily see a ROI if, it's only a seven-ish thousand dollar investment. It's kind of here now.
It is. And I think I saw one the other day on a video, like it changed its own battery. So it's not like it even needs to shut down to go and recharge for 4 hours before it goes back to work. It literally walked away for, 30 minutes, whatever the process was, changed its own battery and went right back to work. I mean, that's hard to compete with, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah, definitely. But to your point, it as if you can ride the wave, rather than get swallowed by it, and just use technology to use the AI and whatever's at your disposal. That's the way to, continue and thrive and grow your business, right?
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I know we're coming up close on time here, but I always ask my guests at the end of the show, what is one practical tip for business owners that want to start eliminating waste and improving their bottom line?
I would say, go for what we call a waste walk, right? Go walk out on the floor, go walk in the office, whatever it is. And, a couple of questions. There's a few things. One is you can ask people, what are they waiting for, right? What's in their way from staying productive, if you will? What are they reworking? I mean, anytime we're having to do things more than once, so anything, rework, redo, remake, retouch, whatever. That's a big opportunity. And then what's overcomplicated? Where is the bottleneck? What takes too much time to do when you have all the time in the world to do it, right? So I think just asking simple questions like that could at least start pointing you in the right direction. And then again, going back to what I was saying about asking folks about, do you have a process for this? Can you show that to me? Can you then show me how you're inspecting what you expect and auditing that process? How is that tied to a KPI? How is that tied to the bottom line? I think most companies will find that those answers they don't have them. And that's great because that tells you, you've got opportunity to grow and where to go focus your attention. And that's the thing, shine a light on it. Measure what matters. I know there's a book out there. It is a great book, great examples out there. I'm not advocating, I didn't write it. But anyways, when you shine a light on the opportunity, it will improve, and you give it the right attention. I always say continuous improvement is it's a journey. You just need the right guide. So, understanding how to get out there and do it, I'd start with those simple questions.
Amazing. Yeah. Well said, Ben. Thank you so much for your time. Where could listeners find you best?
Well, really just on my website, so hammerlegacysolutionsgroup.com. You can certainly reach out there. My phone number's on there as well. I do have my LinkedIn page, for both my personal and for the Hammer Legacy as well. So, call me. You don't have to just do the contact page. You give me a call, and if there's something I can do, I'm always excited and open to it. So,
Awesome. I'll leave that in the show notes.
all right.
All right.